stories from around the corner
and around the country.
You're listening to All the Best.
Proudly supported by the Art Gallery of New South Wales.
You're listening to All the Best from FBI Radio 94.5. I'm Madhura Prakash. Before we get into this week's stories, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge that I'm recording from stolen Gadigal land and pay my respect to Gadigal elders past and present, and also recognize that the area where FBI Radio is situated, Redfern, has long been a place of storytelling, strength, resistance, and resilience for First Nations communities. You're listening to All the Best from FBI Radio 94.5. I'm Madhura Prakash. This week, stories that explore our relationships with ourselves and the world around us when we're being viewed by the lens of a normative society. Quick question. What do you think I look like? Sorry, is that a weird thing to ask? Maybe, but I do have a point. Stay with me. You may remember when The Voice Australia first hit our television screens. It was 2012. I personally was 13 years old and squarely in my teen feelings of hating being perceived and being extremely embarrassed about existing. So I was completely bought into the hook of the show. It started with blind auditions. For the uninitiated, this meant that contestants performed to the backs of judges' chairs, who would not see the contestants until after they pressed a button that signified, I want this person on my team. The show was billed as an antidote to the superficiality that a lot of people associate with the music industry. It was all about bringing it back to what's important, an artist's voice. Of course, the producers of the show do see the contestants beforehand, and after the blind auditions, the voting public is well aware of an artist's appearance when they vote week after week and ultimately choose the winner. While reality TV shows use this model to create drama or encourage diversity, it's also a model that's applicable to my life and to your own. Because when listening to radio or podcasts, unless you engage in a good old internet stalk, you do not know what the host looks like. Judging by the popularity of the audio medium, this isn't something that really bothers us. But is that because we're above judging people based on appearance, or just because we kind of forget to do so? I guess ultimately, it's different for different people. Although in a perfect world, we're all moving away from judging a book by its cover, I don't think we can say we've achieved this quite yet. This idea is further explored in our first story today, which delves into the experience of a young woman navigating the online dating scene.
Anyway, he gets up, he leaves after 5 minutes, and that was it. This guy has just gotten up and walked out because of the way that I was born.
Daniella Biagi was in her early 20s when dating apps burst onto the scene. Like most of her friends, she set up a profile. But unlike her friends, Daniella felt the need to be extremely cautious about the photos she chose to share.
Yeah, because then it could be basically low-hanging fruit for somebody going, ooh, somebody of that mindset that might be, fetishy or might be whatever it may be.
She arrived at that conclusion after an incident, which might be better described as a trauma. It occurred when she was just 18 years old.
There was this famous rapper at the time. My friends and I had tickets to go and see him. And yeah, absolutely we're excited. I hadn't ever been to a rap concert that size. We get there and it was quite packed. I like to get to the front. I like to be able to see things. And given my height, I think it was in my mind that anyway, I'd get to the front and see properly.
The rapper began selecting women from the audience to join him on stage. He picked Daniella's group. Her friends scrambled onto the stage, but Daniella stayed back.
I didn't want to get up. So I kind of just looked and stood there trying to avoid this situation.
Daniella was hoisted onto the stage by a security guard. Before she had time to process anything, this famous rapper is dancing on stage, holding Daniella in his arms, her feet off the ground.
it was just really, you're there in front of thousands of people. Half of you is like, this is really cool, this guy's massively famous and he's picking me up. And then the other half of me is going, there's something intuitively that feels very wrong about this. I just had this sinking feeling. I just knew something bad was going to come from it.
A few days later, that something bad comes in the form of a viral video.
And I look at this video and it has the most derogatory way around the way my body's described and this particular rapper lifting me up. And I was horrified and I started Googling this title, and it was on so many different websites at the time. It was on, this is before TikTok era and Instagram era, so it's Facebook, MySpace, and a lot of very prominent news websites as well in America. And a part of me honestly died inside. I freaked out. I was in tears. Like, I literally was hysterical. I think I pretty much stayed in my room for a week.
And in that week, she scanned the internet, reading every single video comment she could find.
And the comments were so objectifying, and they were objectifying in a very sexual way as well. It was like that, it was horrific. I remember walking to university and thinking, I wonder whether any of you guys were the ones. And from a dating aspect, obviously you want to meet people and you want to do things, but in my head, I had this psychological barrier because I was so paranoid that people that were going to be interested in me were going to be these people.
Remember, Daniella was only 18 when this happened. She was just entering the world of dating, and that's a confusing time for everybody. But now she had to worry about the hordes of people who seemed eager to objectify and fetishize her based on her physical attributes. She's 4 feet tall, with short legs and very short arms. How would she differentiate between those types of guys and people who would genuinely be interested in her for all the other things that make her who she is? And so fast forward a couple years to when dating apps are a thing, she made the decision to post selfies from the shoulder up only.
It's a bit of a cognitive dissonance though, because there's a degree of you going, okay, I need to look after myself, but also I've got nothing to hide. It's not like you're trying to hide your body. I'm proud of who I am, and I haven't really had body confidence issues.
Daniella more often dated people she met organically, like at a bar with friends. But when she met someone online, she'd have to consider whether she felt the need to explain anything ahead of time. And sometimes she didn't feel the need to.
Overall, a lot of the experiences are pretty positive. You meet a lot of, but on balance, people are good. It's unfortunately, though, some of those significantly bad experiences that stick out.
Like this one time where she matched with a guy, they messaged back and forth a couple times, and then she made a plan to meet for a first date at a restaurant.
And I'm sitting there, I got there a little bit earlier, so I thought, yeah, I'll just get a mojito. It's all cool. So I'm sitting there just having a drink. And then this guy rocks up. And I could see he was a bit awkward. And I mean, I get that. I get that, okay, cool, I wasn't expecting that your arms are different. That's fine. And then the lady came around. So the lady's come over and asked whether he wants a drink, and he just said, no, I'm not staying for a drink. And he's like, yeah, look, I'm just not comfortable with, and signaled my arms and said, you should be more transparent. And I said, what did you want me to do? Zoom in on my arms and send you zoomed in photos just so you had a bit of a heads up? You're not walking into a situation where This isn't an arranged marriage. I'm not getting this. What am I asking of you? Anyway, he gets up, he leaves after 5 minutes, and that was it. It was embarrassing because the lady, I think, had walked back, and it was just one of those, it was clearly a date gone wrong. Yeah, I drank my drink, paid for my drink, and left. And I was walking back home, and it just kind of hit me, and I was like, this is really, that's pretty confronting. This guy has just gotten up and walked out because of the way that I was born. He hasn't even asked questions. He's just told me what I should have done when he's had zero experience in his life living in my shoes.
When they had been messaging before the date, the guy had already told her what he did for work. He had a professional job where he saw clients.
If that same situation happened with the client and you go into a client meeting and this client rocks up and they've got short arms and legs, you're going to treat them any differently? No. So you do, when somebody has some professional backing as well, you probably do expect a little bit more because of those reasons.
Daniella decided she wasn't going to let him just get away with that without trying to expand his mind a bit. So she sent an email to his work account.
Which is pretty savage behaviour, but I just wanted to get my point across. And I said, it was unfortunate that you were uncomfortable with the way in which I was born. I didn't get the chance to formally introduce myself, and I gave my resume. And it's, particularly honed in on a lot of the diversity, equity, inclusion stuff I did. And then I said that I'm happy to offer him access to a diversity, equity, inclusion toolkit at no cost to him or his organisation, and sent it on, and I felt like a absolute queen about it.
Daniella wants to make it clear, the issue isn't that the date didn't go well. It's not even that this guy brought his biases into the date.
There is no wrong or right with this stuff, but there's just a basic level of human decency that is important in any interaction, that is, whether it's dating or career or whatever it may be, and everyone's deserving of that.
She matched with a guy who lived in another state, and they messaged for a while, and they even talked on the phone a few times. Daniella explained to him that she did look different than the average person.
Yeah, so I explained to him, I'm really short, and he kind of just brushed over it and didn't really acknowledge it, there was nothing to it. So I went, okay, this guy's pretty chill, he doesn't really seem to care. We'd arranged to initially meet at mine, have a drink, and then head somewhere for dinner.
He arrived at her house, and everything seemed okay. But then he said he's not hungry, and he didn't feel like going to the restaurant.
Yeah, so he was definitely trying to make a move. Weird. So my brain's really ticking over, being like, okay, are you not comfortable going out in public? There's something a bit odd now. How do you just flip your mind from that? Because that's what the plan was going to be. And then fast forward, he ended up just getting he was just a bit weird. And I was like, okay. I'm like, what's up? And he was like, oh, just, there's a lot to process. And I said, well, what's it a process? And he was like, what people are going to think. And I was like, what do you mean? What people are going to think? Who's people? And he was like, the world. And I was like, what? And just the gravity of that in my mind hit me. And I was like, okay, this guy clearly ain't it. That was the end of that. I might be okay and I can process the comments, the world, but there are some people that would affect them for the rest of their life. That's heavy. People can make these off-the-cuff comments, but they're not the ones that have to actually live every single day in these realities. I can't just magically go grow arms tomorrow. I can't change my life like that. This is me. We don't know why somebody acts a certain way because we're not them, we don't know them well enough. But worrying about what the world thinks of who you're going to date, or worrying about what people are going to think about who you're sitting next to in a restaurant, that indicate that you need to do some work on yourself. What you do know is that usually when somebody is insecure, they'll project that insecurity back on you, so you can't absorb it. And we can very easily get caught up in thinking that these kind of experiences, that's what you have to deal with. You don't need to deal with it.
So after one of these rare but painful experiences, Daniella vented to her brother, and he suggested why don't you just put a photo of yourself on the app that shows your difference?
Yeah, he was like, why don't you actually just see? Like, why don't you actually put it on there? Like, why don't you just do that and suss it? And if you don't like it, just delete it and go back to what you're doing before. I think I was mature enough to kind of get past some of the trauma that I'd experienced in my teens and early 20s around, relating to that objectification piece. And I think having that point of maturity and having evolved and gone through some of the traps, I was at a better headspace to be able to do that than what I was when I was less mature. It wasn't really too different, to be honest. The only real difference is that I didn't have to navigate and determine whether I felt the need to explain it to somebody or not. It was just a bit of it's way easier for me.
Daniella says there's no wrong or right here. People should just do what makes them comfortable. But for her now, putting yourself out there fully is what feels right. And she gets a lot of interest. Her 18-year-old self would have worried these guys were attracted to her for the wrong reasons. But now, in her early 30s, she simply decided to ask.
I felt like the mad scientist. I was like, I want to know this stuff. I'm a curious person now. So I just asked point blank, what is it? So if you're attracted to me, like, what is it? You can obviously knowing there's a point of difference there as well. And a lot of it was confidence. So that was a common theme in the responses. It was also intrigue. And at first, when I first heard that, I didn't know how to take it at first. I was like, intrigue, because I've heard it before, and I think probably a bit of it was maybe deep down a tiny bit of a trauma response going, ooh, I don't know whether I actually like that. But when I delved into that, so intrigue, so what do you mean? It was more around you've had a different life experience. Like I would actually like to understand more, or where it's been somebody that I've dated over a period of time, it's been okay, well, that was initially one of the things that attracted me to you. And it's not from an objectification point, it was from a genuinely you've had a different life. Like, that's interesting. I want to get to know that more. When you look at that, like, there's actually nothing, you're not a weirdo for being attracted to somebody that has a different life than you.
But it wasn't just about the curiosity and intrigue. These guys also told her they found her physically attractive.
It's also, you still want to hear that. You don't want to just be some unique character and like, look, I don't actually physically find you attractive, but you're unique. Nobody wants to hear that. Like, there's a consistent theme that all these people were super attracted to you, but coupled with that element too, like, it was just interesting because you got both worlds. Yeah, so if I was giving myself advice, it's don't be afraid. It's actually really cool to learn different things and to meet different people and understand how people's minds work at different levels, because you learn a lot from that. And you learn a lot from experiences that are not so great, because you learn about people with insecurities and how blessed you are to be quite secure in who you are. Like, that's actually a nice learning. If you can put that block in your own mind to know that you are who you are, you're going to put your foot forward in whatever it is in life that it may be, whether it's dating or career or any aspect. You're not less than. You've got things to add to the table, just like anybody else. And like anybody else, there's strengths with people and there's weaknesses with people, and that's it. So going in, I would be telling myself to explore and have fun, and just know that people's reactions to certain situations aren't a reflection of you, it's a reflection of them.
That story was produced by Carey Scheer, with additional production by Mel Bakewell. Up next, on an important anniversary, Samuel reflects on his life so far. I'm a huge fan of this artist, and so I wanted to jump in just before you hear this piece to say that it is a story from the past, and spoiler alert, Sam is out here living his absolute best life. So hold on to that trans joy as you listen.
Hello, thank you. So the comic I'll be reading tonight was actually taken from a journal entry that I wrote about a month or two ago when I reached my 1 year on testosterone anniversary, and I was having a lot of complicated feelings and emotions about that, so I just made a comic. So coming out as transgender as an adult and transitioning in my 20s often feels like I was shoved into manhood when I was denied a boyhood. It doesn't feel natural to me to make that leap right away, to call myself a man when in fact I still need time to be a boy first. I didn't have the language to describe how I felt when I was younger, to know that I was transgender, to know who I could grow up to be. All those masculine social cues I missed, all those feminine mannerisms I had to unlearn in order just to blend back into a binary that I spent so many years trying to escape. It doesn't feel natural to me to make that leap right away. It might take a while for me to be the way I'd always imagined me, to see myself and be comfortable with who I am despite anyone telling me what kind of man I should be. I didn't want to admit this to myself or to anyone, but I still feel uncomfortable in my body after top surgery, after being on hormones for over a year now. I didn't want to admit this because I should be happy now. I should be comfortable by now, right? Isn't that what I've been trying to do for these past 5 or so years? But I'm not. In so many ways, of course I am, but just not in the ways I expected or hoped to be. I'm still figuring out how to exist in this world now that these major events in my transition have happened, now that society sees me and often treats me as male. But I wasn't socialized as male. It still doesn't come naturally to me. I had expected it would by now. I still occupy my body and navigate the world in my mind's eye of how I used to look and how I used to sound pre-transition, like a shadow that I can't shake. In that distressed mindset that people are still staring at me, trying to figure out whether I'm a girl or a boy. And in spending so many years making my body invisible from myself and from others, I became comfortable with feeling uncomfortable. And now I'm spending my time healing from that internalized trauma and learning how to be visible again. It's alarming how long the mind can take to catch up to your body, even when you know you can be comfortable now, that you can breathe now, that there are no more chest binders, that the fight is over, that I've done the biggest, most life-changing things that I'll probably ever do in my life. But I need to relearn how to occupy my own body, and I need to relearn how to be comfortable in it. I'd always struggled with body dysphoria before I knew what gender dysphoria was, or what being transgender meant to me. I was always hyper-aware of feeling out of place in my body, not feeling connected to the space I occupied or the vessel that was meant to represent me. Even when I was very young, my mind could easily dissociate from my body and imagine a different embodiment of reality. I moved around a lot growing up and throughout high school, so I've lived in many different homes and had many different bedrooms. Sometimes I'd lay in my bed at night and picture myself back in another bedroom of mine, back in another house, from another time, back when I had another body, just to escape that current body and feelings of deep discomfort and distress about how it felt in relation to my gender. To temporarily exist in a memory of a body before it changed, or imagine a future body where I didn't feel so uncomfortable. I would also dissociate looking in the mirror, picturing how I wished my body looked after I started testosterone and after I had top surgery. And then one day, it happened. After so many years of waiting, the waiting was finally over. I know it was a gradual change, but there were moments where I'd do a double take or look in the mirror for a bit longer. And I remember wishing or imagining to look like this years ago. And that's who I am now. There's something so strange and so surreal about wanting something so desperately to happen for so long that when it finally does happen, you don't know what to do with yourself. And I'm suddenly faced with well, now what? But it does feel like I've crossed over this dark barrier in my mind. and there's this sudden radio silence. After so many years of having non-stop thoughts and feelings of distress and discomfort, it's suddenly quiet. This is the first time in the longest time that I've felt a sense of ease being in my own body. It still feels numb to know that this flat chest is finally here. This deeper voice is finally here. These changes that no one can take away from me because they're a core part of my being now. It's emotionally surreal to see myself for the first time every day, to no longer have to imagine a different self or a different body, in a different reality from a different time. But I need to take time with this new body, to take time to get to know it again, and to relearn how to be comfortable. Thank you.
That story was written by Samuel Luke and performed by him at Read to Me, a live visual storytelling event. It originally aired on FBI's audio fiction program, Or It Didn't Happen. You can find more of Samuel Luke's work at @SamuelLukeArt or on samuellukeart.com. All the Best would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which we make these stories and pay our respects to elders past and present. All the Best is made at FBI Radio on Gadigal land, in association with SYN and 3RRR on Wurundjeri Woiwurrung and Boonwurrung lands, and 8CCC on Arunde and Warramungu lands. The All the Best editorial producer is Mel Bakewell, and Phoebe Adler-Ryan is our executive producer. Our social media producer is Isabella Lee, and our social media assistant is Seth Emmerich. Patrick McKenzie is our community coordinator, and Janae Madden is our content assistant. Shining Bird composed our theme music, and Annie Hamilton designed the artwork. We're heard across Australia on the Community Radio Network, and we're made possible by the Art Gallery of New South Wales and the Community Broadcasting Foundation. You can find our full archive of more than 500 episodes at allthebestradio.com. I'm Madhura Prakash. Thanks for listening.